what 9/11 really felt like, a memory from Manhattan. I want to tell you what 9/11 actually felt like, because I was in Manhattan that day. I saw the smoke. I walked the streets. I remember the flags, the music, the mood. And I think a lot of people today, especially younger people, have the wrong impression of what it was like. Now, don't get me wrong. It was a horrible day. Innocent people were killed. It was tragic. But I never once felt like America was going to fall apart. I never felt unsafe. And I don't remember people panicking too much either. It didn't feel like we were under attack by an army. It wasn't some foreign power invading with jets or submarines. It was a handful of guys with box cutters who took advantage of a weakness in our security system. It felt more like a violent crime than a military act. Yes, it was from a terrorist group, but it wasn't the kind of thing that makes you think the country is collapsing. People were sad. People were shocked, but they weren't terrified. I didn't see hysteria. I saw strength. I remember Rudy Giuliani, keeping the city calm. He was everywhere, steady, present, in control. And then President Bush, first in the Oval Office that night, and later standing at Ground Zero with a bullhorn, his arm around the firefighter. That speech he gave, the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon. You felt that. That landed. The country wasn't in shambles. It was together. And I'll tell you what I remember the most. The flags. I literally walked down the blocks and counted them. Every single home had one. Stores, buses, windows, flags everywhere. You'd hear Lee Greenwood's "Proud to be an American" playing on the radio. Patriotic songs were in the air. It wasn't fear that filled the streets. It was resolve. There was sadness, yes, but no one I knew thought the country itself was in danger. Life got back to normal pretty quickly, and the mood was more unified than I've ever seen in my life. Now, fast forward a couple of years. This is where the real shift happened. It wasn't 9/11 that caused the polarization we live with today. It was what came after, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that became the excuse. The far left wing of the Democratic Party, which had been gaining steam for a while, saw an opening. That's when you started hearing Bush lied, people died. They didn't just oppose the war, they demonized Bush. Now listen, I'm not saying George W. Bush handled everything perfectly. It's possible he misread intelligence. Maybe he didn't press hard enough on the details before going into Iraq. That's fair criticism. But what people forget is the post-9/11 mindset. We weren't living in a world of patience and slow diplomacy. We had been hit, and no president was going to risk letting a hostile regime acquire nuclear weapons. That was the context. That was the fear. He didn't invade Iraq because it was fun. He did it because he believed the threat was real. So did Congress. So did the Democrats who voted for it. It wasn't a lie. It was a decision made under pressure. And years later, even Donald Trump admitted that in 2016, during the debates, he repeated the same old lie: Bush lied, people died. But when Larry Elder confronted him privately, he said, "You owe George W. Bush an apology. He didn't lie." And Trump, who never backs down from anything, actually said, "Yeah, you're right. Maybe I went too far." So there you go. Even Trump admitted it wasn't a lie. But by then, the damage had been done. Once Bush was painted as not just wrong but evil, it became the new strategy. And since then, every Republican has been labeled racist, sexist, homophobic, authoritarian. The playbook was written in those years after 9/11, and we've been living with the results ever since. So yeah, I remember 9/11 differently. I don't remember national trauma. I remember national unity. I remember a moment of grief, but not fear. I remember trusting our leaders. I remember American flags and a sense of pride. And I wish more people remembered it that way, because we might not be so divided today if they did.